Okay, in the last two screencasts, we looked at two possible factors that could decrease the accuracy of eyewitness testimony, so misleading information and anxiety. Now in this screencast we're going to look at how police officers can use a particular interview type in order to increase the quality and the quantity of information that they can take from eyewitnesses, and this is called the cognitive interview. Now, just to put this in context, first of all, we're comparing a cognitive interview with a standard interview. And a standard interview is one which asks quite specific questions about a particular event. So, for example, if you just witnessed a robbery, the police might ask you things such as, what was the man wearing? Was he carrying anything? Did he say anything? Did he have an accent? Did he have any distinguishing marks? How tall was he? So these are questions which are designed to elicit very specific information about the particular event or the particular person that the police are interested in. Now, how the cognitive interview differs from this is that it works on 4 different components, and they are report everything, mental reinstatement of context, recall from a different perspective, and recall in a different order. And we're going to go through each of these 4 in turn. So the first one then, report everything. This is pretty much exactly what it says. With this particular component, the police would be asking their eyewitnesses to report everything that they've seen, and they might do this by saying something like, please tell me everything you remember about the event, even if it seems insignificant. In this second component, mental reinstatement of context, the police officer is going to ask the eyewitness to imagine what it was like when they were back in that particular situation. So they may say something such as, please try to imagine yourself back in the same situation, what you were feeling at the time, what the weather was like, whether there was any background noise. Now, the way in which these 2 components work is through the use of cues. So we looked at the importance of cues when we were looking at explanations for forgetting, and both of these components work on the idea that one thing might trigger the memory of another thing. So insignificant details, for example, when you ask someone to recall everything, might trigger memories of more significant details. Equally, if you ask someone to imagine what they felt like when they were back in that situation when the crime or the incident was happening, those memories of how they felt might trigger memories of other details which are related to the actual incident itself. The third component, recall from a different perspective, is asking the eyewitness to think about what somebody else at that particular scene might have seen. So if it was a bank robbery, for example, the police officer may say something like, please describe to me what you think the cashier of the bank would have seen. The fourth component, recall in a different order, is similar, but instead of asking the eyewitness to recall something that somebody else would have seen who was at the scene, you're asking them to recall the events in a different order to those that actually happened. So the police officer may say something like, please describe the events you saw, starting from the end and working back to the start. Now, the way these second 2 components work is by combating schema. Now, we've referred to schema before. They're a set of ideas that we have about something, and while they're useful in that they can help us process information more quickly, they provide shortcuts for processing information. They can also reduce the accuracy of eyewitness testimony because we end up remembering what we expect to see, not what we actually see. Now, if we are forced to recall something from a different perspective or recall something in a different time order, we can't use our schemas because our schemas tend to work in one particular direction or in one particular way. So what it does is it provides different pathways to access the information stored in our memories and tends to result in more accurate information being given. As always, you can go to the pre-reading if you want some more detail on the cognitive interview and how it's carried out. But before you come into the lesson, make sure you can identify the difference between a standard and a cognitive interview. You can describe the 4 features of a cognitive interview and give examples of possible questions that could be asked. And you can explain the 2 reasons why these 4 components of the cognitive interview tend to increase the accuracy of reading.